Hello everybody and welcome to Facebook Live at Flyin Miata. I am here today, my name is Keith Tanner. I am here today to introduce to you Andy. Andy is one of our ND R&D cars and actually our primary development car for the four cylinders. Andy is a very early ND. Wasn't on the first boat, it was probably on the second boat that came over, and we picked it up in October 2015, I think, on the way home from the Laguna Seca event. And by that point it had already been used for some R&D. We'd been using it for exhaust test fitting and that sort of thing at our exhaust partners. We drove it home and then started doing terrible things to it. Andy actually got off to a pretty exciting start with us. He was in the Coney booth at SEMA 2015. That's actually where the livery came from originally. This is official Coney red. We came up with a stripe package for that. We painted the factory bodywork. We painted it Coney orange red, and we had stickers all over it. You can imagine, you've seen pictures of this car on our website and that kind of thing with stickers all over. That's from when it was the Coney show car. It looked very much like this, just like I said, a lot more stickers on the side. When it came back from SEMA, we started doing four-cylinder development on it. One of our primary cars for the four cylinders, including the turbo kit that I'll show you in just a moment, suspension kit that we'll get to, brakes, everything. We've had a lot of interest in this car when we announced this Facebook Live, a lot of questions about this. So I'm going to start by doing a history of the car, and then I'm going to do a tour of the car, and then I'll address questions. So settle in, this could take a while. So history of the car, I said we did the SEMA thing, we came back. Being a Flyin Miata SEMA car, it was still a fairly functional car. We took out a couple of the things that were just kind of jammed in there for SEMA, like the race seat that really didn't fit properly. Secrets of SEMA cars, folks. And then started doing four-cylinder development. It has a BBR turbo. This was our first BBR turbo car that we used, and we have also used it for extensive track work. Most noticeably, this car was handed over to Road and Track at Laguna Seca in 2017, and they ran it in every single session at the two-day Miatas at Laguna Seca, now called Miata Reunion, event that took place. So they did 15.5 hours of track time. We had everything from club racers to track instructors to, oh boy, I've forgotten his name. Basically an open wheel champion driving it, Alex. What the heck is Alex's last name? I apologize, Alex. He was driving it, of course, Jack Bruth and his wife. So they worked this car over pretty heavily, and you'll be glad to know that we live streamed the entire thing, including telemetry from cooling and that sort of thing. And it finished. The only problem it has, it burned up a set of brake pads, and we had to tighten some bolts on the sway bars after someone had maybe taken a few too many shots at the Zanardi line through the corkscrew. So that's Andy. Andy is still our primary R&D car for this chassis as a four-cylinder. So I'll walk through what it's got on it. From the outside, it's fairly easy to see. As you can see, the major modification is the Flyin Miata tow hook. Haven't had to use that yet, but you know. These are actually factory parts. We just painted them orange. It's held up pretty well, although you can see it's been sandblasted. We have a carbon Miata grill on the front here for a little more open area so we can get more air into the various coolers that are in there. We'll talk about those coolers in a moment. We have Verus dive planes or canards on here, a little bit more front downforce. Great way to whack your shin on too, but they look awesome. And we have the Verus hood vents as well, which are very functional and help pull air through all those heat exchangers in the nose and keep the car extra cool on track. You can also see on the side we're running 6 ULs. These are 17x9s with a 245 4017 RE71R. That's basically our standard high grip ND wheel and tire package. We use them on a bunch of our cars because it's easy to have one specification. We can go back and forth. There's a big brake kit in there, 4-piston on the front, 4-piston on the rear. That's an exclusive setup for Flyin Miata. That's the just over 12-inch kit, so smaller of the two we offer. We also offer a bigger version with 6 pistons, but this car doesn't need quite that level of braking, so it's running the 4-piston. Great setup for the track. Like I said, very consistent when used at Laguna Seca for 2 days straight. We'll come around the back. We have 6 ULs in the back as well. We have a Verus diffuser. We'll get a look at that in a moment, but there's a Verus diffuser down there. You can see our Hush-o-matic exhaust, see the dual tips for that, and of course, naturally, Flyin Miata tow hook. Inside, it's like, oh, Matt's been leaving his parts around again. Inside, sort of, you can see the hard dog roll bar. This was one of the cars that we did the R&D on for this thing. Full use of the top, no obstruction to the little containers or whatever hidey holes that are behind the seats. Easy installation, SCCA legal. It's a good piece of kit. Doesn't get in the way at all. It's much easier to live with than roll bars for the earlier cars. We have a Cravenspeed Short Shift kit, and we have boost control in this car, partly for R&D, and there's a shift light in here too. Where's the shift light? I should know that. Looks like the shift light's actually been removed. There was a shift light in this car. Anyhow, that is the nature of Flyin Miata test cars, as they are constantly being modified. It's kind of hard to keep up with them. Let's have a look under the hood. That's the part you all want to see. Oh, there's a set of Flyin Miata pedal covers in there too, for maximum foot traction, so you don't do something embarrassing when you're braking into the corkscrew. Flyin Miata hood props, let me tell you, these are like a standard. You put these on any car that you own, because you will live with them for about 20 minutes and you'll never want to lose them again. So under here we have our Flyin Miata BBR turbo kit. California legal in all 50 states, probably in many other countries as well. It's making just over 200 horsepower at the wheels, 206, 208, and right about the same amount of torque. It's a very quick setup. Matt Farah at Smoking Tire was very enamored with his power plant. We're quite happy with how it's been working. Rock solid reliability, obviously, as we showed in that 15-hour track test. And this is also running a Verus catch can oil extraction system. There's a better name for that, but that's what I'm going to call it for now, which basically gets rid of all the oil vapor that's present in the intake air and keeps it from getting deposited on the back of the intake valves, which is a problem for direct injection engines. So this helps keep our valves clean, keeps them from coking up. There's a few other toys in here. Being an R&D car, there's all sorts of random little bits and pieces stashed around here. But that's most of what's going on under hood. Let's put it up in the air and see what's underneath. I want to make a pneumatic lift that you press a button and it goes blam straight up to the top. I'm going to have to tie the car down, but you know. I think this takes a long time with a Miata. You should try it with a 8,000-pound Dodge Ram. It's a little slower. All right, here we go. Here comes the reveal. Actually, we'll stop it there for a second, because you can see here, if you peek in the nose, you can see some of the extra coolers that are on this car. Of course, it has intercooler for the turbo, but there is an auxiliary oil cooler on one side, and the other side is an auxiliary transmission cooler. I'll show you those parts in a moment. But those are critical to keeping the car together and happy on the track. We've done some instrumented testing, especially on the transmission temperatures, transmission differential. We were able to get them over 300 degrees in our track testing, and I got to tell you, they don't cool down after you do that. Once you get them to 300, they stay there for a long time, even driving, down the interstate. So with this cooler setup, when we were at Laguna Seca, we had them instrumented, and they were running at just about 200 the entire time. So massive improvement in cooling performance with those coolers. I would call them, given the concerns about transmission longevity in the ND, I would call them pretty much a requirement for a tracked ND, especially if it's got horsepower like this one does. Okay, so now you can see underneath, not much to see on the turbo system, but you can see the Verus underbody flat panels, which obviously help quite a bit with aerodynamics, because slippery cars are fast cars. There are cutouts to keep the catalytic converter from getting anything too hot. Even this cute little lip spoiler here to help extract some of the air through the transmission tunnel. And it's all very nicely fit around the exhaust system. They're a straight bolt-on. This is the diffuser back here. These are all the panels. A great way to improve fuel economy, improve downforce, decrease drag. They're basically a win all around. And of course they come off easily enough if you need to do service. So, nice pieces those. Hard to show off though, so you're lucky. Also hard to show off because somebody put a diffuser in here is we have a cooler for the differential as well. It's similar in concept to the ones that are used for the Global Cup cars. That's the only reason they stay together. The difference is theirs requires an actual modified back housing or housing for the differential. We were able to make it work with a stock unmodified differential, so it's a bolt-on. You can't see the cooler. It's stashed up in here and fed by various vents, but it's all in the back, and it's run by a little thermostatically controlled electric pump. Same with the transmission, so it allows it to come up to temperature quickly, keeps it happy. So yeah, there's actually not a whole lot you can see down here other than the fact that there is stuff that's keeping you from seeing it. So that's either cool or not cool, depending how you look at it. So nice work with Verus. Used to be called Velox Motorsports. They changed their name to Verus. So you can tell this is an early one. So that's about it for what's on the car. If you have any questions, of course, put them in the comments. We will try to address as many as possible. I have a page full of questions already from what came up originally. So let's bring the car down a little bit more so I can talk about it. This is a little faster than going up. So the big question everybody wants to know about this is how many transmissions. The NDs, of course, not known for being the most robust on their transmissions. Our goal with this car is not to test factory components. Our goal is not to see how much power we can put through and blow up with a stock engine. So what we've done is we have installed what is basically a Global Cup car transmission in this thing. It came originally out of a 2017 RF, so I think that's a version 4 Mazda transmission. Then we sent it off to Long Road Racing, who did the Global Cup modifications to it, which involve extra longer or stronger case bolts, as well as I think it's a 3rd and 4th gear from EMCO. So the transmission has been rock solid because, you know, we built it to deal with what we're doing. We're not here to test the transmission. We're here to test everything else. The car has been used for things like clutch change or clutch modifications, different clutches, that sort of thing. But the transmission itself has been in it a bunch of times. It's been rock solid. On the turbo kits in general, I know of one that has failed with our turbo kits, one transmission that has failed. And given the failure rate on these transmissions in regular 4 cylinders, it's hard to say if that's conclusive or not. It's kind of like the rear ends in the original 1.6s from 1990. You could blow them up with a stock engine, or you could run them for 100,000 miles with a turbo engine. It's just happened. So, transmission question, transmission question, transmission question, transmission question, transmission questions. The actual parts list for this thing, someone asked how much it would cost to duplicate this car. Leaving the stripes and paint work out, it's about $17,000 worth of parts on this thing. That means essentially you could buy yourself a nice little 2016 Club and bolt these parts on it. It will cost you about as much as the 30th anniversary. As long as you're willing to give up the orange paint, you end up with a much faster car with bulletproofing on the reliability. That does not include the transmission modifications. There's about $2,500 worth of mods in that trans. So that's about where it is. We're going to put on our website, we're actually going to put a build kit. So you can choose what parts are on Andy that you want to have on your car. And you can build it up as you go. Oh, one important thing I forgot to mention. This thing is running our Fox Racing suspension, of course. This is one of the R&D cars for the Fox Racing suspension. It got a lot of really positive comments from the guys at Road and Track when they drove it. They were very impressed with how it handled the big berms, even as an RD line. It's the same basic suspension that we also use in our V8 cars, which has garnered international acclaim for its capability basically to eat up anything and still be fast and comfortable. So, Fox Racing suspension, Flyin Miata sway bars, Flyin Miata end links, you know, that stuff. What are the must-have components that should go with in a BBR turbo kit if I want a trackable street car? That's exactly what this is. This is a trackable street car. We drove it home, 1,000 miles home from Laguna Seca after finishing that 15-hour test. We changed the brake pads out. We even ran the same tires on the way home. But yeah, this is I have driven cars like this one or this one on 1,000-mile days. It's a great street car. The big thing I would recommend, other than the turbo, would be those transmission and differential coolers. I think those are critical to keeping the car together. Over 300 degrees, not a good thing. The coolers are a great way to both add capacity but also keep the temperatures down. How much boost? I think the Carb EO says something on the lines of 8 or 9 pounds of boost. We try to run them at about 140 kPa. We find that beyond that point, with the direct injection, your pulse width starts getting a little funky. If you try to run your injectors more than 25% of the time on direct injection, you get some very odd behaviors because you're trying to inject fuel on exhaust strokes, on compression strokes. So we found that you can push further than that, but the drivability goes downhill in a hurry, that's where our power limit comes from. That's the most that we can get reliably long-term out of the stock fuel setup. So that's our boost level. It's about, depending on altitude, about 8-9 pounds. More importantly, just over 200 horsepower at the wheels, just over 200 foot-pounds at the wheels. So it's a very wieldy little setup on a 2,300-pound car. Does it make turbo noises? It does make turbo noises. Miles per gallon on the highway, this thing is basically, it's just like a stock ND. Turbos are actually very, very low restriction intakes. It's in the high 30s for sure. I suppose it depends on how fast you drive. You could be in the 40s. We have not done 0 to 60 timing on these cars. That's difficult stuff to do from an instrumented standpoint. It should be in the 5-second range. Exactly where in that 5-second range, I don't know. That's what BBR has come up with. We have not tested to confirm nor deny. But 200 at the wheels, 2,300 pounds, that's going to be quick. Here's an interesting one. Could you swap this drivetrain into an NA? Well, anything's possible with enough money and a welder, right? It has not been tried yet as far as we know. We have a few spare engines sitting around from the V8 swaps. The biggest problem would be controlling it. You can't run this thing on a Mega Squirt. That's not going to work on a direct injection engine. So you'd want to bring over the stock ECU, which you would have to keep happy as it's sat screaming in the dark, missing its body control module, its electric switching module, its dynamic stability control module. You may end up having to transfer quite a bit of the original electronics in. Exactly how many, we don't know yet. We haven't tried. That has not been, honestly, a priority, because honestly, if you're going to put that much effort in an engine swap, is that really the engine you want to end up with? It's a great engine for this platform. Is it worth putting thousands of dollars and potentially hundreds of hours in? There's other options. We get a lot of questions about the turbo kits and boost for the ND2, the 2019s. Physically, this will bolt on, so that's great. That part's handled. The superchargers, that's less happy. They're going to need a new intake manifold to make it work. Turbos will bolt on. The problem with both of them is that there is no engine management available. EcuTech, it's not their first priority at the moment, so they are not making any progress on the ND2. It's a completely different computer. Nobody else, as far as I know, has made any headway on really cracking into it, other than just some little tiny things. So all of us in the industry are waiting for that one, and unfortunately, it's out of our control. But that's the situation right now. No boost for the 2019 yet. When someone gets into that ECU, there will be boost. That's all we know. Miles in the turbo setup and issues. We have broken things on this car. That's why we build these things. Some of them you never saw. There were some downpipe changes that we made because of things we found on this car. There have been running changes made to various components on the turbo kit from things that we have found and customers have found. We haven't broken anything substantial. It's mostly been things like brackets, cracks in metal in various places, switching the bracket design on the downpipe, that kind of thing. So we have broken a few things. They're all the sort of things that we expect and hope to break on these R&D cars, which is what they're for. Since we went through that initial spate of breakages, it's been rock solid. So it's been a very, very reliable little car to run around in of late because of those early failures, that's part of the deal. How many miles? This one has 16,000 or so. It's been back and forth Laguna Seca several times, sometimes in a trailer, often on the road. We also had a twin to this one. We had our 2017 RF called Rufus that had the same drivetrain that was also given quite a bit of road time and was used for the carb testing. So I don't know how many miles there are on these turbo kits overall. We've put 20,000 miles at least on these in the various cars, and they are not easy miles when we're driving them. This thing spends a lot of time on the dyno. It spends a lot of time on the track. This one in particular works pretty hard. I think that's most of it. How long did the car take to build? It's not really a question we can answer because it's an ongoing R&D project. So if you sat down in your garage and you started from a stock car and you wanted this one to come out at the end, how much spare time do you have? Probably a couple of weeks of work if you're able to work at it more or less full time. If you're working on evenings and weekends, it's going to take you longer. You can do it piece by piece, of course. You can do the suspension in a long evening or over a weekend. You can do the turbo kit in a weekend or two. It's a pretty easy turbo kit to install, honestly, one of the easier ones that we have. You could work your way through it, just piece by piece. The nice thing is none of it, you would never have to have the car down for more than a weekend, so you'd be able to drive it in between these various levels of modification. I think that's most of what most of these questions. Do we have any other questions that have come in during the discussion, Matt?
A couple.
Yes.
The first one's going to be, do we have concerns having a high compression engine and a turbo?
Concerns. Now this is where we can get very, very nerdy and talk about the turbo on this thing. And if you watch the smoking tire video of myself and Matt Farrow driving around in Rufus, there is lots of nerdy turbo talk. The high compression engine makes this really interesting. This is a big turbo. This is a 3071 dual TSX. It's a dual scroll or turbo, and it's far bigger than you would expect for 200 horsepower on a 2-liter. And that is to keep the back pressure down, because the last thing you want with a high compression engine is a lot of back pressure. But it also means that the high compression engine has a lot of exhaust energy, so it can spin up that giant turbo very well. So the things that everybody knows about turbo sizing are not applicable on these high compression engines. They've got lots of energy to spin the turbo. You don't put much back pressure on them, so you end up with a very big turbo, which means nice cool temperatures, which means you don't really have to intercool them all that much. We also have a lot of control over the valve timing, and we can sort of adjust, and the cam phasing. We've actually been able to do quite a bit of work to adjust exactly where we want our torque peak. We can move it around simply by reprogramming and keep the engine inhaling as much boost as it can take throughout the range. So we can load it up more down low, and it's almost like we have electronic boost control by messing with the valve setup on the engine. So it's a different world. It's worked very well. When we ran that 13 hours or that 15 and a half hours at Laguna Seca, we were running 91 octane pump gas. It doesn't need any special fuel, doesn't need anything exotic to run like this. It just needs to be set up right and tuned right. So yeah, the high compression engine, you don't feel the turbo. That's one of the cool things about it, is it just feels like a bigger, stronger engine. You don't get that nothing kaboom that you sometimes get with a big engine, a big turbo on a small engine. So compression is good. Turbos like compression, as long as you're not looking for a dyno queen. If you're looking for something with lots of drivability, high compression is actually the way to go. Matt, what else do we have?
Body kit. What type of body kit do we have?
What type of body kit do we have? Well, on the car right now, the body kit, the only parts that are not factory are the Verus, the stuff underneath that we saw already, and the Verus canards. The actual orange stuff is 100% factory. It's just painted orange. We get a lot of questions about that. People think this car has some sort of body kit on it because they're just not used to seeing this bright orange. That's the factory kit that comes with the BBS Brembo package. This was one of those cars. You can see it has neither BBS nor Brembos. But you can also buy them from Mazda. We put them actually on all of our NDs simply because we think they look great. And, well, I'm sure it has all sorts of aerodynamic properties, but yeah, that's all just factory stuff. Matt, that's it? Okay. Well, that's probably enough of me blathering on. That's half an hour of me talking about this for little Miata. If you have any more questions that we haven't covered, put them in the comments, both on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you happen to be watching this, and we will pop in and answer them. Thanks for your attention. We will be back with something else interesting next week.